All right. Hey guys, welcome back to Phil Plays TCG. And today I am joined by a very special guest. This is John Ball here. I have on the line. He was the top ranking Zamasu player at the most recent event, the most recent regional event for Dragon Ball Super that happened last weekend. I have his deck list up in front of me. But we are going to talk about it and kind of overall Blue's place in the upcoming meta. John, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. You know, as soon as I saw this list, I was like, this is super interesting because this is very different than most lists that I've been seeing online. It's very different than a lot of lists I've been working with. First and foremost, this is not a 60 card list, correct? This is still 52 cards, I believe?
Yes, 52 cards.
Okay, so right off the bat, like I said, very different than most other lists I've been seeing. Most people have been going full like 60 cards because they're trying to fit in as much good blue stuff as possible, because Zamasu does want to play the long game, and, you know, it is something that, you know, that kind of makes sense. You want to play the long game, so you want to have a lot of cards in your deck in case, you know, you don't deck out. But why'd you go with 52 cards?
Yes, so I spent a lot of testing right after I got my serial in Montreal. I had not tested any set 2.
Okay.
So I came back, and then on Tuesday is when I started testing for set 2, and I knew going into the event I did not want to bring Tapu at all. And I tried green, I tried yellow, and then the last color I tried was blue, and then Zamasu kind of clicked. And so I got my entire friends Discord server. I got like 4 of us maybe, to just get in there and dig in deep with like them playing Tapu into me over and over and over again for 2 days time when I discovered this on Thursday.
Oh god.
To just refine it as much as possible and cut out everything unnecessary that wasn't good into Tapu. I did not care about any other matchups.
Right. I mean, it sounds like you made the right decision with the huge abundance of Tapu players. But yeah, like, so basically slimming down was just you cutting out cards that you just did not see doing well into the Tapu matchup, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So like right off the bat, when I first saw this, I'm like, wow, there's no Vegito SCR. Wow, there's no Absolute Lightnings. It's so why are those cards not good into the Tapu matchup?
Yeah, so Absolute Lightning is like, the big issue with Absolute Lightning is it's just strictly worse sickle in every possible way.
Right.
Into Tapu, they're never playing a 5-drop. So that's really just not, like, maybe they play Beerus occasionally, but that's not really relevant in this matchup. That's more for the mirror. They usually charge it or just discard it against me in my testing. So they're never playing a 5-drop, and you don't have time to sit there and pay 3 to remove one dude if it's not also putting like a body in play.
Okay.
So it's just the worst possible option. Normally you always want Sickle or Vegito that earlier, and like my friends tried to convince me. They were like, "Oh, you should run it in case you face green," and I was like, A, I'm not gonna face green, and B, it's so beyond dead into Tapu that I can't afford that card. And then the Vegito, on the other hand, the problem with the Vegito SCR is a lot of the good players who play Tapu will slow down against you, and they'll start doing things like hard cast Kefla into the 3-cost Kefla and just draw 2 cards, and you're not bouncing any of that. You are not. It's bad to bounce either of those cards.
Oh,
so
yeah,
you can't bounce any of those cards, and you're just swinging 30 twice into like usually just like their Kefla. Because you want to control the board so they don't have as many cards to hit you with, and so you can stall out to your bigger end game like the Goku Black. And the issue with that is they're just going to pitch 2 cards, and then they're going to play a Gohan and turn your Vegito into a 15k, and it's going to die. So it got either very little value into Tapu, or it was just so bad and unplayable in situations that it was just always charged or used as combo fodder. And after like 4 matches in a row of me not finding a single good use for Vegito, I was like, why am I even playing this card anymore? When top 2 was just such a menace into this meta, so I ended up cutting it entirely.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I do think that both Absolute Lightning and Vegito Secret Rare are much better into other colors, but with Topku being as quick as he is with building such a wide board and having such amazing on-play effects that, yeah, you really don't want to bounce that many cards to hand. You really just want to focus on bouncing cards to the bottom of the deck, which, upon realization, looking at this list here, there's nothing that really says bounce back to hand. Everything gets bottom decked, and that is so good in this meta.
Yes, precisely.
Okay.
This deck is very streamlined to do exactly one thing, which is deal with Topku.
I love that. I actually built this exact same deck and played it into my brother, who was playing Topku, and I did end up losing, but it was such a close game. It just came down to a couple cards, and after playing it, I was like, holy crap, this feels incredibly like streamlined. Like it doesn't feel like it's so bulky. It doesn't feel like it's full of unnecessary filler. It just feels like very bare bones basic things for Zamasu, and that's amazing. Now, I forgot to mention this. You did mention you bubbled out of the top 32. You ended up going 5-2, correct?
Yep. Into 7 top 2. It was all top 2.
It was all top 2. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. My friend in South America I think he cut it down to 50, he said, but he took it to top 16. They only published the top 8 list, but he lost in top cut. But he did go, it was either X1 or X2 into top 2 as well.
Right.
With the same list.
Okay, I gotcha. So my next question is, why Zamasu in particular? Because there's plenty of other blue leaders that I definitely have a bit more that have been around longer and have been around for people to test more. And Zamasu being, I guess in my testing, I've felt like Zamasu is just awful into Topku solely because his ability doesn't trigger until you're at 2 or less life, when that's where Topku wants to put you. So you're in Kefla, not Kefla, I'm sorry, Ribrianne and Glimpse range. So why did you choose Zamasu over something like Trunks or Vegeta?
So I tested Vegeta first, actually. That was the first one I tested. And I did not like what Vegeta brought to the table. His specialty cards that are like Vegeta Leader Locked or whatever, and like just swinging for 35. I never felt like I got enough value into Topku with them for it to actually be that crazy. And then I do think Trunks is very good, and I'm going to be working on Trunks. But like, I came up with this deck on Thursday, and the tournament was Saturday.
Oh, wow.
So there was no way, and I felt there's no way I could cook Trunks in time. I think I can cook Trunks in time for Chicago if they don't hit the format and change it entirely, which they very well may. But I do think Trunks is good this format. It's just a lot trickier, and it'll be a lot more involved in deck building because Trunks is a lot more of a complicated playstyle.
Right.
And then Zamasu, I felt he was good into top 2. I almost never used his leader ability, and both of my losses, I'm very critical for myself. I located misplays in both of my losses that like very heavily influenced the game, including as early as charging a Goku Black turn 2 and not seeing another one when it came to my turn 6, and he was slow playing by only sitting on 2 bodies on board. If I had the Goku Black, that game would have been very easy, but I made the mistake of thinking he would be like my other opponents and play fast and just try to swarm me, which I was sitting on double Zeno. So that really bit me in the end. And I feel like if I didn't make mistakes, I would have done very well. And then I messed up perfect lethal as well. So it wasn't, the deck could have done better. It was me that made the mistakes, not the deck. Okay. The deck was very, very good into top 2 all day.
Okay, gotcha. Well, hey, that's awesome. That's, I'm glad that it's perfectly fine to critique yourself, you know, like I get it. You could, it's so easy to be like, oh, well, I lost because of this, but you know, if you can admit like, yeah, I messed up, you know, my plays, that just means you're going to take that loss and learn from it and just do better next time. So that way you don't make these mistakes. But that's super cool. And the more and more I look at this list, like the more and more I really do enjoy it. Fun fact, I pretty much took this exact build and I minused, I want to say 6 cards out of it. I removed the 4-drop Zamasu and 2 of the Goku Blacks, and I replaced them with 4 Harumakis and 2 Final Hope Slashes for my Trunks build that I'm currently working with. And to be honest, it still feels really good. Just replacing 6 cards and throwing the Trunks leader in, it's doing surprisingly well in my testing. For those watching, I am going to be posting a couple videos of gameplay with Trunks into Tapu. You should definitely go check those out when they are out. But back to this list here. You know, like I really dig the Zamasu leader as a whole. I love the
I didn't even use his life gain effect very much. I think I used it 2 or 3 times total.
Oh yeah.
I use him more as a 25k, which is what I really like, because all of their 20ks, they play the 3-drop Kefla, the 2-drop Hit, their leader. It means they have to start pitching all of their 1-drop combo pieces, which you have a ton of ways to bottom deck. So they're not really going to be able to sit on them on board,
right?
Very often.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, is like 25k, as we saw with Broly in the first meta, was that extra 5k can go quite the distance. But so going forward, would you say there is any adjustments, any changing of ratios that you would be considering?
Yeah, so use Zamasu. I'm probably going to cut down to 2 copies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I did not. The problem with that card right now is that the best card in the Tapu mirror is the set 1 Gohan that gives the whole board dank 10k. And so they just go set 1 Gohan, Kefla into set 2 Gohan, and then they just neg it. And it doesn't even get any of the it doesn't get on KO because it's reduced to 0, and that's like a game state effect.
Yeah, I really think they need to change that rule. That is one of the dumbest things. I understand it in a master, like in Dragon Ball Masters, as someone who does play that too. But in Fusion World, I really do think they need to make that, I don't consider that a game state. It should be considered a skill. But that's a whole other discussion, a whole other topic there.
It is.
But okay,
yeah, so I'm gonna cut down to 2 with those guys, because like it's very good in the end game. Like when you get to once a closing out a game, the card becomes really good. But early on, they're just gonna string 2 Gohans together and make you sad.
Yeah, that makes me sad just thinking about it. Okay, so we're thinking about dropping 2 Zamasus. Are we just thinking of going to a 50 card deck, or do you have an idea of what you would replace it with?
Yeah, so let me explain the 52 versus 50 actually real quick, because this is something I need some math on. So in 50 versus 52, you have a 1.3% less chance of seeing a specific 4-of, which is about 1 in every 100 games, which is not that relevant. But if both of those extra cards are 10Ks, which they are, because I considered my 51st and 52nd card to be the second Vanilla Goten and the second 2-cost Trunks Youth. Yep. So those are both extra 10Ks. And if you have 2 more 10Ks, you have a 5% higher chance. This is like estimated. It's something in the decimal points, but it's about a 5% chance more to see 2 10Ks in your opening hand. So that's 1 in 20 games, and that's starting to matter a lot more in these longer tournaments, where that will come up a lot more often than 1 in 100 games. So it was really, it hit 2 main goals. It was 1, higher 10K ratio, which is very important because they're going to be swinging 20s at your 15 leader, and you want to combo out of that with 10Ks almost every time. I
Right.
wanted to combo out of like every 20 swing and 15 swing they sent my way. So you need to see 10Ks. And then it also helps with the go tanks ratio. So it was like hitting two things at once. Now, if I cut the Zamasus out, my 10K ratio will be better because those are 5Ks going. But I'm not quite sure about those slots. I feel like there are some text slots in this deck that can be customizable to like player preference. I think player preference is underrated in card games, and like people have different play styles that work for them in the decks, and we see that in top two. There are a lot of wildly different builds. My friend Vic got his serial this weekend using one with 3 arena and like the U7 searcher, which almost no one else was on.
Yeah.
So there's just it's playstyle preference, and I think there's slots. I think you could run the Vegito SDR if you like it. I think you could run the Vegeta SR if you like it. I think you could run more removal or more tech options. I was considering throwing in a sword to help close out games.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, the Final Hope Slash has always been one of those game-ending cards for blue. Being able to, use it, play Peel Off, grab it back from the discard, use it again, bounce Peel Off back to your hand, so you have another way to get it back at the end of it. The shenanigans with Peel Off and Final Hope Slash are so good. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You like having more 10Ks. Like when I was testing this list, it just feels good. So your opponent was always having to give up more cards just to swing into your leader or any of your battle cards, because they're all about 25K and above. Having those extra 10Ks, it just felt so good. I really like this list. Besides the 2-drop Zamasu, is there anything else you would change in this list?
I waffle on and off about the Go Tank slots. The 2 extra copies versus 1 extra copy of each.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what's correct, and I think either or could be correct depending on like what the player wants and how often they want to see, versus like, because they are kind of bricky. If you see a bunch of them together, they're just like, I mean, they are 10Ks at the worst, except for the draw one, which is it draws 1, so it's not a brick at all.
Yeah.
But you can just see too many of them. So I've considered going to 1-1 and testing out some other stuff, but I also kind of want to leave them at 2. I'm not sure where my testing will take me on that yet.
Yeah.
I think either is an acceptable answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be doing extensive testing within the next 3 weeks for the Peoria regional that I'll be going to. And it's right now it's either Zamasu or Trunks. Those, I think I've kind of determined that those 2 are going to be the best 2 leaders to pilot into this, especially if the meta continues to be excessively Tapu. We don't know if Bandai is going to do anything to the meta or add to that deck, or any of the red cards in general that are making that deck a bit ridiculous. There's a rumor that something may happen on Friday, but I don't know. I have a feeling Bandai's not going to make any hits yet, because the set's still new. They want people to buy the product, and if you ban cards or limit cards in the set as you want people to buy your product, it's probably not gonna take a little bit of a hit in the sales department. But you also, going away from the deck list here, you also wrote a very in-depth article that got a lot of positive feedback. And the article essentially was how to beat Tapu with Fuse Zamasu. And I gave it a read a couple times, actually. It's a lot of information to take in, and I'm not so great at retaining a lot of information like that. But a couple more read throughs, I'll be able to get it down. It's a very detailed, basic play instructions of like what you should be looking for in your first couple turns, if you go first or second, and then what you want to do in the mid game, and then how you want to finish up in the end game, including some mind tricks and some mind games, as you put it in the article. Yeah. Well, can you talk a little bit about that for me, just like the article in general?
Yeah, sure. So this is the first article I've ever written. I've played competitive card games for a long time, but I've never really been a content creator, but this deck struck out to me as just like a solid, clean list, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to share this and try to spread the word about how there is actually a deck that like puts up a very positive win rate. I mean, 5-2 is very good.
Oh yeah,
and my other teammate also went X2 or into Anti-Tapu, so and there were mistakes made as well. It could have even been better in the hands of a better pilot who didn't make mistakes. And so I think this deck was just very, very well positioned, and I wanted to share it with people and get more people onto Zamasu and away from like the doom and gloom. Like, yes, top 2 is crazy strong, but there are actual answers in the game built into it. And so I tried to go as in depth as possible as I could in a very short form written article. It's a very condensed. I felt like I didn't like waste any space. I just tried to make it as condensed, concise, and clean as possible on how to pilot this deck in every stage of the game, including like what you're looking for in your opening hands.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. The opening hand, of course, you want to look for your 1 cost. You want to look for your 1 cost cantrip, or you want to look for the 1 cost Zamasu, so you can bottom deck whatever your opponent decides to play on their turn 1 if you have to go second.
Yep.
And then let's hop over to the kind of the mid game. The mid game is you basically want to focus on your opponent's board. You don't want to you want your opponent to do all the work with Awakening, because you just don't want to help them out. You want them to waste more resources. The more cards they play, the more things you can bottom deck.
Yep, it's like this deck is a weird balancing act, and it can feel like you're playing from behind all the time until you take control of the game, but that's control in general. That's generally how control plays into aggro decks, and that's how you have to play it here as well. It'll feel bad, and then you start doing things like playing Sickle and a 1-cost Trunks and leaving up Gallic Gun and stopping 2 attacks like that, and then you're feeling pretty good going into your turn 6, or just slamming Gotenks turn 5, leaving up Gun. Always felt really, really good, because then you stop 3 attacks and you also swung into one of their bodies. And generally they'll have to do something like Gohan swinging your Gotenks, so it actually ends up stopping 4 attacks, because you just let the Gotenks die. You actively want the Gotenks to die for your Goku Black anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just the mid game is pretty much where you have to bridge, and it differs if you have the energy marker, because you get to do things like Zeno a little early or Goku Black a little earlier than normal. Some games I was forced to use it on like Vegito. The 3 cost is a very common energy marker use because it stops the hit, or it stops, if I don't have the Zamasu, it stops the Roshi. And there was one game where I'm pretty sure I even sickled using an energy marker to hit their Roshi only. They didn't have a turn 2, they just had a Roshi. And I'm pretty sure I energy marker to sickle to stop the Roshi, because I just know that deck is like live or die on its Awaken.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can stall their Awaken for even 1 more turn, it really slows down the pressure significantly.
Oh, 100%. And then finally, not finally, then you talked about kind of like the mind games you want to play with this deck. Like specifically the Zenos right here. Because Zeno, upon more testing with it, oh my god, this card is amazing. It's great that blue has basically an oh shit button that we can hit, and the card is incredible. 10k combo, it bottom decks everything on the board. So if your opponent just wasted a whole turn going after your board, clearing it, and you have a Zeno in hand, you just do the same thing and you still get a 20k swing. But the mind game, like the part of the article that you mentioned playing mind games, is making sure you either combo with a Zeno early on or charge one, kind of basically letting your opponent know you run Zenos, and
yes,
you have to, and they're going to be scared to go completely wide if they think, oh, I'm just going to get Zenoed in one turn and all of my all of my cards are just going to go to the bottom of my deck. And a lot of people were commenting about how like that is an amazing way of using a card to kind of mess with your opponent's playstyle. Some people talked about like, oh, like that's not really cool to do that. It's bringing up something about Yu-Gi-Oh, which I thought was kind of odd. But no, tell me a little bit more about that, if I didn't already explain it all.
So Yu-Gi-Oh actually has this thing where Konami does not like anything outside of the game affecting the game. So doing things like that would actually get you like a ban in Yu-Gi-Oh. It's happened in the past.
Oh, Jesus.
But Bandai, it's not against the rules. I confirmed with a judge. You're just playing mind games. You're getting in your opponent's head, basically, which is where I want to be in the game. I want them to basically be forced to think about things without them realizing that they're being forced to think about it by me. So I try to do it as casually as possible. I will just charge, and I'll say, like, a lot of times I just say charge and then I just put the card there. They can see it, but I'll specifically explicitly say Zeno. I want them to think about Zeno because I really want the Goku Black to be my play. And a lot of people, especially in that tournament where like Zamasu's kind of unknown, everyone just like played mirror matches. A lot of people didn't really know how to play in a blue, but they saw the Zeno and they knew, okay, you have Zeno, so I'm going to hold back. And that it makes your Zeno better when they do that, because then you get to establish Goku Black, you get to establish your other threats. So they have to go wide to answer your board and answer your threats. And oftentimes they will. They'll go really wide. They'll put down like a Gohan or two and minus your Goku Black, and then spend a lot of resources dealing with your Goku Black and Gotenks. And you still got the 2 cards back from the Gotenks as well. So they're going to spend a ton of resources on that. And then you can generally just use 1 or 2 of those resources you got back from Gotenks and then let your field die. And then after they've gone super wide after that, your Zeno is way better than it was before because it cleans up way more. You didn't have to use any resources on the turn before Zeno that you didn't get from your 1 Goku Black. And so it makes the format, it makes it really easy to close out the game if you are allowed to Goku Black. And if they do go wide, it's still very winnable. I had multiple opponents who just like Tefla'd me every round. And one of them, my first round opponent, even put like 4 dudes into play 3 turns in a row. And in the first 2 turns, I just Zeno'd him twice in a row. And then the third one, I cleaned up with a sickle and like a 4-call Zamasu. And then the game was basically over from there as I took it over. But so like the mind games don't have to work for the deck to work. They just make it easier because your opponent is forced to think about things and take things into consideration that are actually end up being harmful to them sometimes. And sometimes you don't even have the Zeno, but just by baiting them, they think you will have it, which is where I talked about where, like, sometimes I'll even just talk about Zeno in the previous game, or I'll bring it up out of context if I don't have the Zeno, and that way they're forced to kind of think about it, even if I don't have it, and maybe they'll apply a little less pressure. And that little less pressure really adds up when you're going to the end game, and the difference is like losing by 5 or 10 games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I dig this. That's super cool. I'm trying to think of, there was something else I wanted to ask you about. So now I remember what it is. I apologize about that. So going into this meta, you built this deck entirely around beating Tapu. Do you feel like this list in particular could even stand up against other colors, like people playing Cell, Frieza, Yellow Vegeta, or do you feel like this deck is only good into Tapu?
So I think this deck is kind of cracked. It just kind of destroys Yellow. Yellow doesn't really do much into this deck. The worst thing they can do is like put up like a 6-cost Frieza, I guess, but I just Zeno it. Even if the Zeno enters tapped, oh well, my 20k enter tapped. That's really not a big deal at all. It still wipes their board. So I think yellow kind of, and then like Scythe is just, or sorry, not Sickle, not Scythe. Sickle is crazy into yellow as well. It's just, they have so, in all of their, the other problem with yellow, specifically with Zamasu, it's the same Broly problem. A huge portion of yellow's good cards are 20 days. And just having a 25k leader just sitting there really punishes that. Like they have to either use a bunch of cantrips and waste their resources to not go net negative cards, or they have to eat a card every time they want to try to get me to eat a card, which is not good for yellow. And then green is interesting. I'm not sure about Cell yet. I think Cell is kind of really strong looking forward into like a post-Tapu future. I just know that in my testing, no matter what build of Cell I tried, if Tapu wins the dice roll, you are not winning that game. So I kind of gave up and like threw Cell out of the meta because of that. I feel like this deck might struggle into Cell, although I did test into Broly because there were some Broly with the new Senzu Bean builds floating around that were like possibly playable into Tapu. Not like super great, but they could win if they won the die roll pretty hard. And then I ended up actually like cleaning the floor with Broly by just staying super healthy, sitting on 4-cost Zamasu, and then making them basically I would go to when their Broly turn is at like 7 HP because I comboed out of every leader swing they ever took.
Yeah.
And then I would have like a few Zamasu that they'd want to hit with Broly, so I would let that die, and then they'd swing at me once, and I'd go to like 6, and then I would awaken on their second Broly, and then play Zeno and kind of clean up both Brolys. And from there, I felt like I kind of wrecked my friend's Broly, so I felt like this deck was good into Broly, just because you can stay so healthy that you can let them play 2 8-drops before you even Zeno once. And then you kind of take over from there, and then Goku Black cleans up that deck just as easily as it does every other. That's like, I feel like that's Blue's best win con in any Blue deck right now, just because of how good it is with Gotenks.
Right, absolutely. Just stay healthy for as long as you can, and then just, take a couple hits near the end game, and then just win on the crackback. That's why I really love this Zamasu deck as a whole, and just the true blue control deck of the format, it feels like it's just fun. Yeah, like being able to stay at healthy life for so long. And during my testing, my brother would be like, how are you still at this much life? And he'd be 3 or less life, and I'm still rocking like 6. And I'm like, well, there's like, I don't want to go down to that low, because that low of life is scary. But Zamasu being able to do so many cool things on his front side, you really rarely ever have to awaken. Like, you actually would try to, I would even imagine you would try to not awaken if you don't have to, because you want that ability to draw. You just want, you may want to go to, you may want to awaken just for that 25k attack power, just so you can be defensive and aggressive like you mentioned early. But I mean, I can't imagine you would want to awaken you don't want to awaken early with Zamasu or Blue in general anymore, which is crazy because Blue had like...
No, I'm trying to awaken, if possible, I'm trying to awaken around turns 5 or 6. Sometimes it's not possible. I have to awaken turn 4.
Really? Okay, so you actually want to awaken fairly... Okay, so I guess that's another thing that's very different than a lot of builds I'm used to playing with this deck. You want to awaken at like turn 4 or 5.
Yeah, so the reason is I often try to do it so that I go to 3 off of their last available attack. That way I can attack on my turn and then flip. So I'll draw from the attack and then flip and draw. And then I'm swinging 25. And like, you think you're not drawing cards, but in reality, you are every turn, because you're swinging into 25 bodies. Every other leader in Blue, except for Vegeta, would have to combo a card to reach those thresholds. And then you're also stopping the 20k attack. So it's like you're in, like, more important than the defense 25 is the offense 25 lets you not have to do anything to swing into Kefla. You get to just you get to pressure their Kefla for free. Everything in this deck that swings is basically at 25 already. So I feel like that's the magic point of this format right now. Previous format, it was 20, with yellow just applying a ton of pressure with 20s, which was why Broly was so good at 25. Well, this format, the magic number is 25, and you really need to reach that with as many things as possible. And every single threat, including the leader in this deck, does that without using any other cards. So it's like you're drawing a 5K every turn and using it aggressively to try to combat their board.
Okay, I didn't think about it like that. But that makes sense. Okay, gotcha. Well, I think we're going to wrap up this video for now. Last two things though. One, like first, is there anything else you want to say about this deck? Something that we haven't already covered that you really want the audience to know about?
Let me think about that for a second. I really don't like that I have to play Vegito 3 cost. I think it's kind of a weak link in the deck. I think it is very good early on, specifically against 2 and 1 drops, especially if you're going second and you can energize it out.
Oh yeah.
It really helps there. But after that, it's probably the worst card in the deck.
You're not
like going into the end game, it feels really bad. So it's very much just like fodder after that. But it is very necessary because you just have to hit their hit or their Roshi. You must do it.
Right. No, I mean, like, I agree. I love the Vegito, but it only really is good up until turn 3, and then after turn 3, it's really not that good. I mean, sure, you can combo it with Sinister Sickle to bottom deck to 5 costs, which is insane, but most people, like any Tapu player worth their salt, is going to go after Vegito and try to get rid of it as soon as they possibly can. So you're going to only get really 1 turn out of it, maybe. So no, I agree with that. It is kind of crazy that really minusing the Vegito and the Fuse Zamasu, the only true like addition to this to blues to this deck in general from set 2 would obviously be the leader, Zeno, and the 1-drop Goten. It seems like a lot of blues cards that got in this set, which are supposed to be making it that much better, a lot of people are starting to think like, okay, they're good, but they're not as good as we thought.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I feel like if green wasn't so oppressive in set 1, blue would have been a really strong counter to yellow and red in set 1. And I think that's because blue's tools are very good at dealing with people who go wide. And Zeno is just like an even more exemplification of this design philosophy they clearly have, where all of blue's tools are not very good at dealing with tall men, like just going like 45s and 45s. That's not what good blue is great at stopping. But if you're just pinging me with a bunch of small dudes, I mean, Gotenk stops 2 of those by himself, and then he's also a body on top of them. It's 25.
Oh, yeah.
Alley Gun just stops that card is crazy. That card is almost basically a pseudo super combo that draws a card. And then you have so many good value engines. Sickle's crazy at going wide. Goku Black is just the best Gotenks enabler in the game in a way to actually close out games.
Oh no, 100%. And then finally, what is your opinion on people's outlook on the meta right now? Being like, oh, it's Tapu. Like, if I don't play Tapu, I'm not going to win. What do you think about the state of the meta with the rampant Tapu decks? And I guess what would you tell people like who don't want to play Tapu but also want to do good in the meta?
Yeah, so I think Tapu is an easier deck to win tournaments with than top tournaments with in this deck. I think you have to think a lot harder with blue and Zamasu and make way less mistakes. Mm-hmm. Whereas Tapu's like overall power level is higher. So it's very obvious too when you play against bad top two players. Like they're not great players, but the deck is so inherently strong that it doesn't matter. They're just gonna like just put out a bunch of power through them being not great at the fundamentals of Dragon Ball anyway. So I think that deck, this deck will not be the greatest choice if you're not a good pilot and you don't have the time to put in the reps needed to get good with this deck. Whereas Top Coup, you can kind of just pick it up and just go aggro at people, and you'll against all non-Top Coup mirrors and non-blue decks, you'll probably just smash them, just because the deck is so strong and fast. And I do think I don't necessarily want to see the deck banned. If anything, I would be fine with just Ribrianna being banned and nothing else. I feel like that would make the format a lot fairer. Top Coup would still be probably the best deck, but it would be a lot more reasonable that you wouldn't have to be so scared about just instantly losing it too, right? Because that's the big thing Top Coup does, is they'll put you at 2, and then they're gonna Ribrianna and arrogance you to death.
Oh yeah, it's the best finisher in the game for basically 3 energy. You're getting a 55 double striker, and
yes,
that's just insane. I thought like gigantic meteor was disgusting, but glimpse in Top Coup is actually broken. But yeah, no, it's.
I think the real problem is Ribrianna there. Like without Ribrianna, I feel like that matchup would be so much more manageable.
Right, because you would have to worry about a double strike coming out for 1 energy nearing the end game, when like every double strike up until now has been no less than 5 cost. Like you had to pay 5 cost in order to get a really good, amount of damage through. But then they would also be at 0 combo power. But for some reason, Ribrianne is like a 10k for some god awful reason, and
yeah,
it makes no sense. She's never dead in hand because other double strikers were dead in hand unless you could play them. So I thought that was like the trade-off they were making. Like, oh, this card can take double life, but it's not going to have any combo power. But now they're like, nah, we're gonna give you double strike and 10k, and it can be played for 1. Like it's, I don't know what they were thinking with that one. But
see, it's the energy in this game thing. It's like every time there's something broken in card games, it's gonna be on cheating on cost almost always.
Yes,
it's gonna be something's coming out for free or for 1 instead of like its normal cost. And that's what this deck does. It puts out 7 cost of units for 1, and that's just absurd compared to what every other deck is doing.
Right. Like people try to talk about, oh, blue has, free play. It's like, first of all, blue's free play starts when you pay 6 and then you get a 4 cost. You're cheating out 10k. You're basically getting 10 cost worth of cards for 6 energy, which is far less worthwhile than getting 7 for 1. And or like how Ginyu in set 1, essentially it's a free card as long as you have besides it 2 other Ginyu Force cards in play. So like there's all these different regulations. It just feels like every other color was properly managed when it came to the free play, but for some reason this color and this set didn't get the same treatment.
Yeah, I agree.
100%. But all right, I think we've kind of talked about everything we need to talk about. We got some amazing discussions going over Zamasu, Blue, and all that good stuff, that a lot of fans here love. So I really want to thank you, John, for coming on the channel, talking to us about the deck you used, your experience, and your play style that you played, and some good ideas what to do with the deck. I think this is a great foundation to anyone that is looking to play Zamasu, or hell, even like Trunks for that matter. Tweak a couple cards. I feel like this deck could easily work with Trunks, at least from my testing has shown me. But yeah, this is a great starting point for Zamasu players, and I think they could just kind of go from there, pick cards that they think fit their play style and fit their locals if you are just staying at the local level. But yeah, this is really, really cool, and we have quite a bit of practicing to do for the next couple regionals, which will be in June, in Chicago and Peoria. So do you plan on...
I will be both of those.
Oh yeah, do you plan on going to any of those?
I plan on going to every NA regional, including Gen Con, and I'm
nice.
also thinking about going to the one down in Chile.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome. Well, you know what? If you are at the Peoria Regional, I'll definitely try to find me, man. I'd love to actually meet you in person.
Yeah, I'll come say hi.
Perfect. Well, hey, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, all that fun YouTube stuff. And like I said, there's going to be a couple more videos of gameplay matches coming out with Zamasu, Trunks, Vegeta, and of course Tapu. We got Cell. We got lots of different decks that we're going to be testing out over the next couple of weeks. And really appreciate any and all support you guys are willing to give. Thank you once again, John, for coming on the channel. This has been a very fun discussion.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, hey guys, this will be it for us, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care, guys.